The meteorite crashed in the Nevada desert at 3:47 a.m., leaving a crater half a mile wide. By sunrise, the government research facility had already secured the area. Among the first scientists to arrive was Thomas Miller, head of the Advanced Materials Division, who couldn't shake the feeling that this discovery would change everything. "Something's not right with these readings," he muttered, staring at his handheld scanner. The device was showing energy patterns that made no sense. The chunk of space rock before him wasn't particularly large, but it contained a metallic substance unlike anything recorded in human history. The initial tests in the makeshift field lab left the entire research team baffled. The silvery metal inside the meteorite seemed to absorb kinetic energy and store it, releasing it later in controlled bursts. When they struck it with a hammer, the metal not only remained undamaged, but appeared to capture the force of the impact. "Hit it again," Thomas instructed his assistant, Robert. The younger scientist complied, bringing the hammer down hard on the metal sample. Instead of denting or showing any sign of impact, the metal glowed briefly with a blue light. "Now watch this," Thomas said, pressing a small button on the testing apparatus. The metal released the stored energy in a focused beam, cutting a perfect hole through the lab's reinforced steel wall. The assembled scientists stood in stunned silence. Word spread quickly through the facility. Within hours, the head of military research, General Wilson, arrived to witness the demonstrations personally. His weathered face remained impassive as Thomas explained their findings, but his eyes betrayed intense interest. "So you're telling me," the general said slowly, "that this metal violates the basic laws of physics, that it can store and redirect kinetic energy at will?" Thomas nodded. "It's not just storing the energy, sir. It's amplifying it. We hit it with enough force to dent steel, but when released, the energy cut through reinforced walls like they were paper. By all known laws of physics, this shouldn't be possible." The implications were staggering. Armor that could absorb the impact of explosions and redirect the force back at attackers. Weapons that could store energy from small impacts and release it as devastating blasts. Engines that could recycle their own kinetic energy for nearly endless power. Over the next few weeks, the research facility transformed into a hive of activity. More scientists arrived daily, each bringing new equipment and ideas for testing the mysterious metal. They named it paradox steel, though it wasn't actually steel at all. They still hadn't determined its exact composition. Thomas worked tirelessly, often sleeping in his lab. He knew they were sitting on the greatest scientific discovery in human history. The metal didn't just bend the rules of physics, it broke them completely. Every test revealed new properties that should have been impossible. One morning, as Thomas reviewed the latest test results, Robert burst into the lab, his face pale. "You need to see this," he said, turning on the news feed. The screen showed massive objects entering Earth's atmosphere. Alien ships, their designs unlike anything humans had imagined. "This is why they fast-tracked our research," Thomas whispered, watching the ships move into orbit. "They must have known something was coming." General Wilson arrived within the hour, his uniform crisp despite the early hour. "Miller," he said, "how close are we to practical applications of paradox steel?" Thomas gestured to the prototypes laid out on his workbench: armor plates, weapon casings, and engine components. "We've barely scratched the surface of what this metal can do," he replied, "but what we have might be enough to give us a fighting chance." The general nodded grimly. "Good, because right now, that metal might be the only advantage we have." He looked up at the news feed, where the alien ships loomed like dark clouds over Earth. "And we're going to need every advantage we can get." Thomas turned back to his work with renewed determination. Humanity had found something revolutionary, a metal that defied the very laws of physics. Now they just had to hope it would be enough to save them from whatever waited in those ships above. The race to understand and harness paradox steel had begun, and the fate of humanity might depend on its outcome. The alien ships hung in Earth's sky like massive black daggers. Their arrival had thrown the world into chaos. Stock markets crashed, religious leaders declared the end times, and governments scrambled to maintain order. But inside the Nevada research facility, Thomas and his team worked with fierce determination. "These readings can't be right," Robert said, studying the data from their orbital scanners. The alien vessels were putting out enough energy to power a small country, yet they seemed to generate no heat. Their technology was decades, perhaps centuries ahead of Earth's. The first message from the aliens came 3 days after their arrival. Every screen on Earth flickered to life simultaneously, showing a tall, gray-skinned figure with 4 eyes. The being called itself the voice of the Dominion. "People of Earth," it spoke in perfect English, its voice deep and emotionless. "Your planet now belongs to the Dominion. Surrender, and you will serve. Resist, and you will be eliminated. You have no technology that can harm us. You have no defenses that can stop us. You have one planetary rotation to respond." General Wilson arrived at the lab minutes after the broadcast ended. "Please tell me you have something," he said to Thomas, his usual composure cracking slightly. Thomas led him to the testing chamber where they'd been working with larger pieces of paradox steel. "Watch this," he said, activating their latest prototype. A sheet of the metal absorbed the energy from a high-powered laser, glowed blue, and redirected the beam with twice the power. "Their ships use energy weapons," Thomas explained. "If we can scale this up." The general's response was cut short by another worldwide broadcast. The Dominion ships had moved into position above the Pacific Ocean. A demonstration, the alien voice announced, of the futility of resistance. The world watched in horror as beams of intense green light struck 3 uninhabited islands. In seconds, the islands simply ceased to exist, leaving only steam rising from the ocean. "That's why they're so confident," Robert whispered. "They can literally erase us from existence." But Thomas noticed something interesting in the footage. "Play it back," he ordered, pointing at the screen. "Look at the energy signature when their weapons fire. It's the same type of energy manipulation we've seen in paradox steel, just on a massive scale." The revelation energized the research team. They weren't just working with an unknown metal anymore. They were working with something the aliens might already understand. If they could unlock its secrets first, they might have a chance. The world's governments agreed to a temporary show of compliance, buying time while secretly pooling their resources. Every available scientist and engineer was redirected to studying paradox steel. Mining operations around the globe were converted to search for more meteorites containing the mysterious metal. Thomas's team made breakthrough after breakthrough. They discovered that paradox steel could be melted and reformed without losing its properties. They found ways to enhance its energy absorption capabilities. Most importantly, they learned how to manufacture it in larger quantities. 30 days after first contact, the Dominion voice returned. "Your time of preparation is over," it announced. "We have detected your attempts to develop weapons. This is unfortunate but expected. You now have 2 choices: immediate surrender or immediate extinction. You have 1 hour to decide." In the research facility, General Wilson watched the message with grim satisfaction. "Perfect timing," he said, turning to Thomas. "Are the prototypes ready?" Thomas nodded, leading the general to a massive hangar. Inside stood rows of sleek aircraft and tanks, their hulls made entirely of paradox steel. Teams of workers were loading energy weapons powered by the same metal. "They think we're primitive because we didn't have this technology before," Thomas explained. "But humans are good at one thing above all else: adapting and improving what we find." The general smiled for the first time in weeks. "The Dominion thinks they're giving us an ultimatum," he said, "but really they're giving us exactly what we need: a chance to show them how humanity fights back." Above them, the Dominion ships began moving into attack position, unaware that humanity had just revolutionized warfare with a metal that defied physics itself. The real battle was about to begin. The world's factories worked at full capacity, Their assembly lines converted to produce paradox steel equipment. What had started as a secret project in Nevada was now humanity's most important endeavor. They called it Project Shield. Inside the main production facility, Thomas watched as massive sheets of paradox steel emerged from the forges. The metal glowed with an eerie blue light, its surface rippling like liquid mercury, despite being harder than diamond. "The Chinese facilities are online," Robert reported, checking his tablet. "European Union too. We're producing more paradox steel in a day than we did in our first month of research." Workers fitted the metal plates onto the frame of what would become humanity's first true space warship. Unlike traditional vessels, this one was designed around paradox steel's unique properties. Its hull could absorb enemy fire and redirect the energy into its own weapon systems. "The Dominion thinks they're being merciful," General Wilson said, walking up behind Thomas, "giving us time to reconsider our defiance. They don't realize every minute they wait makes us stronger." The general wasn't exaggerating. In underground bunkers across the globe, soldiers trained with paradox steel armor and weapons. The armor could absorb the impact of a direct hit from a tank and channel that energy into a counterattack. The weapons could store power from a small battery and release it as devastating beams of focused energy. But it wasn't just military applications. Engineers had discovered that paradox steel could revolutionize space travel. Its energy recycling properties meant ships could maintain acceleration using minimal fuel. What once seemed like an impossible deadline was becoming achievable. "Latest intelligence report," Robert said, handing Thomas a document. "The Dominion has been jamming our deep space communications, but we caught some interesting chatter. They're confused by our confidence. They expected us to break down and surrender by now." Thomas smiled. The aliens' arrogance was their weakness. They assumed that any civilization that hadn't already developed energy weapons and faster-than-light travel must be primitive. They hadn't counted on humanity's greatest strength, the ability to take a new discovery and run with it. In orbit, the first test of a paradox steel satellite went perfectly. It absorbed a test blast that would have vaporized a normal satellite and redirected the energy to power its systems for a month. 20 days left. General Wilson reminded them, watching the satellite feed. "Will we be ready?" Thomas led him to a secure room deep underground. The walls were covered with blueprints and technical diagrams. "We've cracked something big," he explained. "The metal doesn't just absorb and redirect energy, it can amplify it. Every piece of paradox steel we make is more efficient than the last." He pointed to a simulation running on the main screen. It showed a paradox steel ship taking a hit from a Dominion energy weapon. Instead of being destroyed, the ship's hull absorbed the blast and channeled it into a return shot with twice the power. "They think they're giving us time to accept our defeat," Thomas said. "Instead, they're giving us time to build their worst nightmare." The general studied the simulation with intense interest. "And you're sure this will work?" "The math is solid. The Dominion's weapons are incredibly powerful, but they follow the same principles we've been studying. Every shot they fire at us will only make our counterattack stronger." Above ground, more ships were taking shape. They weren't as large or numerous as the Dominion fleet, but they didn't need to be. Each one was a testament to human ingenuity. A perfect fusion of paradox steel and Earth's best technology. As the deadline approached, humanity's forces took position. Paradox steel ships hidden behind the moon, armed satellites in strategic orbits, ground-based weapons disguised as civilian structures. Every piece of the metal they'd produced was part of an intricate defensive network. The Dominion had given Earth 30 days to surrender. Instead, they had given humanity 30 days to prepare the biggest surprise in military history. Thomas looked up at the alien ships through the facility's skylight. "You wanted to see what humans do when backed into a corner," he muttered. "Well, you're about to find out." The countdown to humanity's first real interstellar war had begun. The Dominion's attack began at dawn. Green energy beams lanced down from their ships, targeting major military installations across the globe. They expected to find helpless targets. Instead, their weapons met layers of paradox steel defense. In the command center, Thomas and General Wilson watched the tactical display. The alien beams struck the defensive shields and were absorbed, causing the paradox steel to glow with brilliant blue light. Energy absorption at 70% and climbing, Robert reported, monitoring the readings. All defense grids holding steady. No breaches detected. The Dominion ships paused their attack, clearly confused by the lack of destruction. Their second volley was stronger, concentrated on fewer targets. The defense grids glowed brighter, their stored energy reaching critical levels. Now, General Wilson commanded. Across the globe, paradox steel installations released their stored energy. Supercharged beams shot upward, each carrying twice the power of the original alien attacks. 3 Dominion ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Impossible. The voice of the Dominion boomed across all channels. Your species does not possess this technology. You cannot have developed energy weapons of this magnitude. Thomas grabbed the communication controls. We didn't develop them, he transmitted back. We just improved on what we found. Humanity's good at that. The alien response was immediate and devastating. Every ship in their fleet opened fire, pouring enough energy into Earth's atmosphere to have previously destroyed a continent. The sky turned green with their weapons fire. But humanity was ready. The networked paradox steel defense grid lit up like a second sun, absorbing and channeling the massive energy attack. The metal surface rippled and pulsed, drinking in power that could have cracked the planet. Grid capacity at 95%, Robert warned. We need to release the energy soon. General Wilson nodded to his commanders. Hidden paradox steel ships emerged from behind the moon, taking the Dominion fleet by surprise from behind. Earth's ground-based weapons fired upward. The combined attack released all the stored energy at once. The result was spectacular. Dozens of Dominion ships were caught in the crossfire, their supposedly superior shields failing against weapons powered by their own energy. Those that survived began to retreat, breaking formation for the first time. They're pulling back, Robert announced, his voice filled with disbelief. We actually drove them back. But Thomas noticed something on his screens. Wait, he said, look at their engine signatures. The retreat is too disorganized. This isn't their normal behavior. He was right. The Dominion ships regrouped quickly, forming a new attack pattern. Your resistance is unprecedented, the voice transmitted, but ultimately futile. You have merely shown us that we must use our full strength. The alien fleet's weapons changed color, shifting from green to deep purple. Energy readings are off the scale, Robert reported, his face pale. This is more power than anything we've seen before. General Wilson remained calm. That's exactly what we wanted, he said. Their arrogance makes them predictable. Thomas nodded, activating the hidden command sequence. Across Earth's defense grid, secondary paradox steel arrays powered up. These weren't just designed to absorb and redirect energy. They could capture and multiply it. The Dominion's super weapons fired. The purple beams struck Earth's defenses with unimaginable force. For a moment, it seemed like the defense grid might fail. Then the secondary arrays kicked in. The paradox steel didn't just absorb the attack, it fed on it, growing stronger. The metal's natural energy amplifying properties, enhanced by human engineering, turned the Dominion's greatest weapons against them. When the defense grid finally released its stored power, the resulting blast was visible from Mars. The energy beams split into multiple streams, each targeting a different Dominion ship. Their shields, designed to withstand normal weapons, offered no protection against their own amplified power. In orbit, the alien fleet broke apart in chaos. More than half their ships were destroyed or crippled. The rest jumped to faster than light speed, fleeing Earth's space. In the command center, humans stood in stunned silence. They had just done the impossible, driven back an alien invasion, using the invaders' own power against them. Send word to all commands, General Wilson ordered. The first battle for Earth goes to humanity. The war had only begun, but humanity had proven one thing. They were no one's easy conquest. The mood in Earth's war room was tense but determined. 2 weeks had passed since they'd repelled the Dominion's first attack, and humanity was ready to take the next step. The captured alien ships have given us everything we need, Thomas explained, showing holographic maps of nearby star systems. Their navigation data, their communication protocols, and most importantly, the location of their closest military base. General Wilson studied the tactical display where dozens of Paradox steel warships waited in Earth orbit. These weren't the hastily converted defensive platforms they'd used before. These were purpose-built weapons of war designed to take the fight to the enemy. The Dominions never faced a species that could fight back, Robert added, pulling up intelligence reports. Their entire strategy relies on overwhelming force against helpless targets. They don't know how to handle an equal fight. The new human ships were magnificent. Their Paradox steel hulls had been forged with all the lessons learned from the first battle. They could not only absorb and redirect energy, but store it for later use. Each vessel was essentially a giant battery, ready to unleash devastating counterattacks. All ships report ready, the fleet commander announced. Operation Payback is go. The human fleet jumped to light speed using engines powered by Paradox Steel's energy recycling properties. They emerged near a massive Dominion space station, catching the alien forces completely off guard. "This is Earth Fleet Command to all ships," General Wilson transmitted. "Show them what humanity does when pushed too far." The battle began with a surprising tactic. The human ships deliberately absorbed the Dominion's first panicked volley of fire. Their Paradox steel hulls glowed brighter and brighter, storing every bit of energy thrown at them. "They still don't understand," Thomas observed from the command ship. "They're actually making us stronger." When the human fleet finally returned fire, it was devastating. Shots that should have taken down one ship sliced through 3. Dominion vessels exploded as their own energy was turned against them, amplified by factors their shields were never designed to handle. The space station's defenses crumbled under the onslaught. Paradox steel boarding craft cut through its outer hull, deploying teams of soldiers wearing armor made from the same material. Inside, the aliens faced another shock. Their personal weapons were worse than useless against humans in Paradox steel suits. "Station control center secured," came the report from the assault team. "You need to see this, sir. We found their military database." The information they discovered was shocking. The Dominion wasn't just an invading force. They were galactic conquerors who had subjected dozens of species to their rule. Earth wasn't chosen at random. They systematically attacked developing civilizations before they could become true threats. "Look at these battle records," Robert said, scanning through the data. "Not a single defeat in over 1,000 years, until now." The human fleet's victory was total. The Dominion's regional command center was captured, their local fleet destroyed or scattered. But more importantly, they'd proven that humanity could take the fight to the enemy and win. "Send word back to Earth," General Wilson ordered. "Tell them to begin Phase 2 of production. We're going to need more ships." Thomas studied the captured alien star charts. They'll come back with everything they have now. The Dominion can't allow word of their defeat to spread to their subjugated worlds. "Let them come," the general replied. "Every ship they send is just more energy for us to use against them. Humanity's done hiding." As repair crews secured the captured station, technicians were already adapting its facilities to produce Paradox steel components. The very base that was meant to support the invasion of Earth would now help defend it. The fleet's first major victory marked a turning point. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival anymore. They were fighting to liberate the galaxy from the Dominion's reign of terror. "Send a message on all frequencies," General Wilson commanded. "Let everyone hear it, even the Dominion's slave worlds. Tell them that humanity hasn't just learned how to fight back. We've learned how to win." The war was entering a new phase, and the Dominion was about to learn that they'd awakened something far more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. Human ingenuity combined with the power of paradox steel. In the captured Dominion space station's archive room, Thomas stared at the holographic displays with growing horror. The data recovered from their military databases told a story more terrible than anyone had imagined. 10,000 years, he said, scrolling through the records. They've been doing this for 10,000 years, hunting down civilizations just as they reach for the stars, crushing them before they can defend themselves. Robert nodded grimly, examining another set of records. Species after species, all following the same pattern. The Dominion waits until they detect radio signals or early spaceflight, then strikes before they can develop any serious defenses. The archives showed hundreds of conquered worlds. Some species had been completely wiped out. Others were enslaved, forced to work in massive factory worlds producing weapons and ships for their conquerors. The Dominion's empire was built on the broken dreams of countless civilizations. But they made a mistake with Earth, General Wilson said, studying the tactical data. They waited too long. That meteorite with the paradox steel changed everything. The Dominion's own records revealed their confusion. They had detected the meteorite's impact, but dismissed it as unimportant. By their calculations, humans were still decades away from understanding energy weapons. They never imagined that humanity would not only understand the metal's properties but improve upon them. "Look at this," Thomas called, bringing up a new display. Messages from their subjected worlds. The news of our victory is spreading, despite their attempts to suppress it. The impact of humanity's resistance was causing ripples throughout the Dominion's empire. Slave species that had been docile for generations were showing signs of unrest. The very idea that the Dominion could be defeated was sparking hope in places where hope had died centuries ago. "They're getting desperate," Robert reported, intercepting new transmissions. "The Dominion's high command is mobilizing everything they have. They know they can't let this rebellion spread." In the station's command center, they watched as reports came in from across the sector. The Dominion was pulling forces from their subject worlds, gathering the largest fleet in their history. They intended to crush Earth with overwhelming force, making an example that would terrify any other world thinking of resistance. But their actions were having the opposite effect. As their grip loosened on conquered worlds, underground resistance movements grew bolder. The very species they had oppressed for centuries were beginning to rise up. "We need to move fast," General Wilson said. "While they're focused on gathering their fleet, we can make contact with these resistance groups, show them how to fight back." Thomas had already anticipated this. He brought up designs for smaller, simpler versions of their paradox steel weapons, things that could be quickly manufactured and easily taught to others. The metal's properties made it ideal for guerrilla warfare. "Their entire empire is built on fear," he explained. "Fear of their overwhelming power. But we've proven they're not invincible. Once other species learn how to use paradox steel, they'll never be able to maintain control," Robert finished. "Their own weapons will become their weakness." The humans worked quickly, using the captured station's communication arrays to make contact with resistance leaders on nearby worlds. They transmitted technical data, manufacturing specifications, and battle tactics they'd developed. "The Dominion thinks this is just about Earth," General Wilson said, watching the information flow out across the stars. "They don't realize we're about to dismantle their entire empire." The station's sensors detected more activity. Ships were appearing at the edge of their range, but not Dominion vessels. These were crude, hastily built crafts from nearby subjugated worlds, answering humanity's call for allies. "Send them the coordinates for the rendezvous point," Thomas ordered, "and prepare the paradox steel manufacturing facilities. We're going to need to arm a lot more ships." As the first alien allies docked with the station, humanity realized they'd uncovered something far bigger than their own fight for survival. They discovered the Dominion's greatest secret, that their power was built on preventing civilizations from reaching their full potential. Now, armed with paradox steel and the determination to share it, Humanity was about to show the galaxy what happened when species were allowed to truly develop. The real revolution was just beginning. The combined fleet gathered near Earth was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Ships of every size and design, built by a dozen different species, all unified by the gleaming blue glow of paradox steel weapons and armor. Humanity had shared their revolutionary technology freely, and now the formerly enslaved races of the galaxy had come to join the final battle. Dominion fleet detected, Robert announced from his station on the command ship. They'd brought everything they have. Over 10,000 vessels. Thomas watched the tactical display as the massive enemy armada emerged from light speed. The Dominion had stripped their entire empire of ships for this battle, leaving their subjected worlds unguarded. It was exactly what the Revolution had been waiting for. All ships, battle formation, General Wilson commanded. Remember your training. Let them fire first. The Dominion's voice boomed across all channels. Your rebellion ends today. The natural order will be restored. Lesser species must learn their place. We've learned plenty, Thomas transmitted back. We've learned that you're not gods. You're just bullies who never faced a fair fight. The battle began with a massive energy barrage from the Dominion fleet. Their weapons lit up space itself, pouring enough power into their attack to destroy a planet. But the Allied ships held firm, their paradox steel hulls drinking in the energy. All ships report energy storage at maximum, Robert called out. They gave us exactly what we needed. Now, General Wilson ordered. The combined fleet returned fire. Every ship released its stored energy in perfect synchronization, creating a wave of amplified power that tore through the Dominion's front lines. Their supposedly superior shields crumbled under attacks powered by their own weapons. But this battle was different from the others. As the Dominion fleet reeled from the first strike, signals began broadcasting from their own ships. Slave crews, inspired by Earth's example, were rising up against their masters. Multiple Dominion vessels reporting internal fighting, Robert announced excitedly. The subjected species they forced to crew their ships are taking control. The Dominion's perfect formation broke apart as ships began turning on each other. Centuries of oppression had finally reached a breaking point. The very people they had conquered and enslaved were now using their own ships against them. Thomas coordinated with the rebel ships, guiding them to safe zones where they could join the Allied fleet. Each vessel that switched sides was quickly retrofitted with paradox steel components by waiting engineering teams. The Dominion commanders watched in horror as their supposedly invincible armada tore itself apart from within. They had never imagined that the lesser species they'd terrorized for millennia would dare to fight back. Their command ship is making a run for it, Robert reported. They're trying to escape to light speed. Not this time, General Wilson said firmly. All ships execute final attack pattern. The Allied fleet moved with perfect coordination, surrounding the retreating Dominion command ship. The massive vessel found itself trapped, facing weapons powered by its own desperate attacks. Surrender, Thomas transmitted. Your empire is finished. The species you enslaved are free. The Dominion's response was predictable. They fired everything they had in one last, desperate attack. The Allied ships absorbed the blast, their paradox steel hulls glowing like stars. When they returned fire, the combined blast erased the Dominion command ship from existence. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread quickly. On hundreds of worlds, oppressed species rose up against their weakened overlords. The Dominion's empire, built on fear and overwhelming force, collapsed in a matter of days. In the aftermath, humanity emerged not as conquerors but as liberators. The secret of paradox steel was shared freely with all species, preventing any one race from dominating the others again. The galaxy's never going to be the same, Robert said, watching ships from dozens of newly freed worlds coming together to form a new alliance. Thomas smiled. That's exactly what we were fighting for. The Dominion thought they could keep everyone weak and divided forever. Instead, they united us all against them. As the Allied fleet began its victory formation, General Wilson made one final transmission. Let this be remembered as the day when the galaxy learned that true strength isn't about having the biggest weapons. It's about having the courage to share your power with others. The age of the Dominion was over. The age of cooperation and shared innovation had begun, all thanks to a mysterious metal and humanity's determination to use it for the good of all.